evening to be a candidate and to eventually be named the new superintendent here. So it's been a whirlwind of a year, and I'm grateful and thankful to be here every day and to work with such an amazing group of staff who truly love our kids, try to meet their needs, and there are quite a few in 2026 that need more than measuring a standard. So we're thankful you're here. Tonight we do not have a presentation, so we did want to show you where to find all the information online. So as we try to get a little bit of tech help, we tested it earlier, but everything that we are going to talk about tonight, all the facts are listed on our website at the top black bar, and hopefully we'll be able to show you that before you leave tonight.
My name is Floyd. I'm the new treasurer, CFO for the district. Haven't been here quite a year yet. I started officially in October, but I'll just echo all the same sentiments Mr. Daniels just stated there. Very happy to be here. It's been a very welcoming place, and I'm looking forward to the future and answer whatever questions you may have tonight. So anything that you want to know that's regarding the financials, that would be me. And I love doing deep dives and stuff. So if I can't give you an answer in 15 minutes or so, or 15 seconds or so, I'll give you my contact info and I'll dig in and get you whatever you need. So the door's always open on that.
So prior to the evening, we did have some questions submitted on Facebook, so we'll start with those. And if it organically makes you think of a follow-up question, we can kind of pivot and go from there. So the first question we got was, why are you currently asking for this amount of money, and is the levy permanent? So the first questions really were about the current ballot issue. So is the levy permanent? No. This is a 5-year levy. One of the things that we heard during our listening tour after the earned income tax failed was it was permanent, it was forever. The community would feel better if the district would maybe be a little more accountable or look at this in chunks. So the ask on the ballot is 5 years at this current amount on the ballot. And then Mr. Floyd can talk a little bit about why we're asking for this specific amount of money.
Yeah, so one of the big things that I obviously do when I'm getting acquainted is just going through the financial history of the district. I won't beat the dead horse and talk about the plants for 30 minutes tonight. I think we all get the point there. That is clear. But to be fair, that is a pretty, I'll say, can everyone still hear me okay over the fridge? In terms of the unique revenue streams that this district has, having had 2 plants, I believe we're the only public school district in the state of Ohio of all 611 that had 2 plants. I believe we're only one of 7 that had just 1 plant that experienced a closure. So for us to have 2 and to have them both closed puts us in a very unique boat, and that's like less than 1%. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And it just kind of works out that revenue stream of about $4 million is what is lost from the total closure and devaluation of those plants. So that's just essentially to fill in the hole that was left there. Because what the state doesn't understand is when they do those new valuations and they say this is your new data that you're calculating taxes on, the money spigot turns off right then. It takes them years to calculate and change their funding formula to account for our loss of property value. So it's kind of a weird double-edged sword. They still value the property of the plants and say we're wealthy on the onset, so they're giving us less money. So it's kind of like a weird double whammy. They're saying we look wealthy, even though we may not all feel that, right? We're all feeling the same inflation. So that's where the $4 million comes in. And again, that's just to make up for that loss of the plant revenue and again, keeping up with expenses. On that note, just to give you a quick snippet here, how many of you have noticed your Duke bill going up significantly as of late? So I had some Board of Education trivia at the last 2 board meetings. They got to guess what the Duke bill was. I believe the January bill was just around $68,000. The February bill escalated to $106,000. So I looked at a 5-year history. Our March billing last year at this time was $45,000. That shot up to over $68,000 this year. So I can't just call Duke and say, sorry, not paying the bill, but please keep the lights on. Just like we can't do that. So, those are things that I try to account for. I even actually baked in a 30% increase for utilities alone when I got here, when I did our initial fall forecast, because I knew it was coming, and it's still exceeding that. So there's just some transparency there, and just one of the big things that we have to do to keep the lights on. So, there's just a little bit about for you, and one of the reasons that we are just asking for that money to make up for that difference. So, yeah, it's over 5 years.
So the next question was, how much does the district spend on salaries and administrative costs? How does that compare to the county or the state if applicable? How much does this district spend per student? So while Mr. Floyd looks that up, there's a couple things that we like to share. The state has what's called a base cost for students. So that's about $8,200. So our district receives only $1,800 of that $8,200. And so the district needs to make up, the local taxpayers have to make up that difference. And that goes back to the property wealth that the state says that we have here. So we do start at a pretty big disadvantage when it comes to what some districts get. They get close to the $8,200. We only get about $1,800 of that. And that is part of the state formula. So that is something that is often hard for people to understand or grasp, but that is our reality. So the question was, how much do we spend on salaries and administrative costs? How does that compare to the county or state if applicable? And how much does the district spend per student?
Perfect. We're in line zone. So I'll kind of present this a few different ways. Everybody still hear me okay? I'll make sure my volume is good. So one of the things I'd like to prepare as just like an overall educational 3 to 4 minute thing is how to read a 5-year forecast so you all can adjust this large document I prepare twice a year. So I'm going to read some figures off that, but also put it in some easy bite-sized percentages as well. So to put that in perspective, salaries and benefits, they typically say the standard is like 85% of a school's operating budget. Ours for fiscal 25, let me make sure I'm saying that. Sorry, for this fiscal year is only 72%. So that's 13 points under what people consider to be average. When we put that in perspective across the state, I don't have county numbers right in front of me, but statewide, last fiscal year, we were at 76.4%, so we're already down from last year on that category. The state average last year was 79.9. So we're just about 3.5 points below the state average last year, and we've also dropped about 4 points ourselves from last year, if you're all following. So we are dropping. To put that in dollars, last fiscal year we spent $14.7 million on salaries alone. Many of you are probably familiar with the severance buyout that occurred that got a lot of teachers off of the payroll. 10 of those teachers were not replaced. Okay, and that's going to save us quite a bit of money. This fiscal year, we're projecting $13.7 million spent. So just about $1 million in savings alone from that. Next year is actually 13.6, which is lower than this year because of the reduction plan we filed in December. And the next year is 13.9, the next year is 14.3. So the next 4 fiscal years, this one included, we'll be spending less on salaries than we did last fiscal year. And that's not an easy thing to accomplish. We can try to trim supplies and purchase services a little bit and nickel and dime stuff, but staffing is really what moves the needle. And that's exactly the approach we're taking. It's hard as it can be. If we look at things from a perspective of student-to-teacher ratios, and we just see that there are more bodies than we need, those are decisions that we'll have to make. Because again, I basically take an average teacher that's midway down the salary schedule with benefits about $95,000 to $100,000. That's salaries and benefits. Newer teachers, not so much. Older teachers, a little bit more. But again, I think that's probably one of the biggest success stories as far as just the transparency and responsibility pieces. We're attacking the most expensive part of this budget and reducing that for the next 4 years being less than last year. And back to the admin costs, we are, as of February last month, our general fund administrative costs are just under 7%. The state does not want us to exceed 15%. That's their magic bad number they spelled out for us this year. So we're not even halfway there as of February. So I kind of hope I hit all the points in a way that's digestible to some degree. If anyone has follow-ups on that, I'll have to take that now while it's fresh in mind. Yes?
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
You keep saying that the state still counts all this property.
Mm-hmm.
When is that going to get taught to them someday?
I could ask you the very same question.
When are they going to quit?
So that's my favorite line to say is I'm at the mercy of what those in Columbus will do. When you figure out what their intentions are, let me know. That'd be great. But no, they typically, those ways that they change those calculations will take a few years, unfortunately. So again, locally, they say the plants are shut, the value is basically nothing, so the tax bill drops, we get less immediately, but the state says, you still look wealthy, must be nice, so you go ahead and make up the difference yourself. Even though I think we're just over 50% low income as far as student enrollment right now. So that was one of our big pain points in the fall was how can that be that they are by their own reporting we're at a 50% low income count, but they still see us as wealthy and won't throw us a few more votes. That's what's frustrating to me.
So that can't be argued.
Yeah, so why are we at the state store to argue that? Because they're not a contact or something we can go to? That's like, hey, we're like 40%ers over here, but not in the wealthy end.
Yeah.
We have plants that have closed, and you need to get off your asses and look at it.
Yeah, so you guys might know a person named Adam Bird. You might have heard of him. We are in pretty frequent contact with him, but one of the things we're working on is trying to kind of build a coalition of the other 7 districts that have experienced the power plant closure loss, because again, we're in this very small niche pocket of having a very drastic rug pulled out from under us, and there's no recourse except them saying, you all just make up for it locally. That's your only option.
Right after
Right, exactly.
$1 billion to private schools.
Right. So again, it must be fun to make all the rules and break them at the same time.
Well, at the same time, is there like I'm a mental health counselor. We just had counselor advocacy. Like we go to Columbus and we meet with all the representatives, and we tell them everything we want, and they listen or they don't, whatever. But is there an advocacy day for educators or education?
There was just one. Let me tell you, they charged everybody. We did not go.
Okay.
It was $250,
Okay.
I think, per district. The legislators didn't break caucus and they never came to listen. So the most important thing that you can do that we have learned is it is ineffective for everybody for someone to write an email for everybody to cut and paste it. The most effective thing that we've heard from our legislators is for you to email them personally and ask those specific questions. Not a canned email that I'm from New Richmond and we've lost all this money. It's your question of we've lost our 2 power plants. We are considered a wealthy district. How do we, how can we be looked at differently? And you
Can we
send
post that
to
on our
2 people.
on our website for people to find
We can put
easily?
we can put our
email or a phone number so that
we can definitely put who our legislators are. So we in our House district is Adam Bird. So the Ohio House is Adam Bird. And then our state senator who covers quite a few counties is Terry Johnson. He's a doctor. So those are our 2 those are the 2 people. And now I would also encourage you, just because we do receive money from the federal government that is important to us. So when we talk about our poverty level being at 50%, we do get title funds. So those mostly are tied to low income. And also one of the largest expenses that the district has seen grown over the years is educating our special population. And they deserve the highest quality education. But we're not seeing the reimbursements from the state match up to the level of the need. And it's a free, appropriate public education. I strongly believe that every child deserves the services. So if you wanted to email David Taylor, who is our federal adult in Ohio, or the capital in our Congress House district, U.S. Congress House district, you could definitely let him know that you want to make sure that we maintain our title funds, as well as we get there's a question here about mental health. We get wellness dollars. We call that Title IV. That helps us offset some of our cost to provide mental health services. And then, most importantly, that IPEA money. If any of those fall, guess where we have to go to try to make that money up? The local taxpayer. So the state's not adjusting any of their formulas. In fact, the state has had 6 different formulas for funding public schools, all of which would have worked. But now every time they start to imbalance the formulas, and then they stop working and they shortcut the system. So, you know, I always say this, and I can't blame the people that are there now. This problem is at a head because in the 70s they were having the same problem where they were seeing property taxes escalate too high, so they brought in the income tax. So the property tax stayed low, and then they grew the income tax. Well, I don't know if you've been listening, but they're dropping the property or the income tax, and most everybody's property taxes are coming up. And you know they've made it. They've done things along the way that's made it difficult. You know, we talk about businesses used to pay taxes on their inventory. So a car dealer, if they had 400 cars on their lots, those cars unsold would generate taxes. They removed that. So every time they remove something, they're not adding it back to the equation. So the most powerful thing you can do as a citizen is we can advocate. But they get mad when we advocate. They really do, as the treasurer superintendent. The average citizen, and I've seen it with the data centers, Mr. Byrd has called everybody that's reached out to him, and he takes that time. So personal emails with your personal, questions are really what they value. They don't value cut-and-paste emails. So I think this is a good time maybe just to say, someone asked, did the Board of Education join the 300 other Boards of Education in Ohio to the state over vouchers? We did not. And ultimately, I'm glad that we didn't because they've tried to do two things recently. One is they were going to try to withhold your state funding because you joined the lawsuit. They beat that back in the legislature. And now they're going to withhold any money that a district spent on legal fees to be in the voucher fight. So we need every dollar that we can get. Whether the board joined it or not, I don't think it would have made much of a difference. I think it was already moving. The train was already moving down the tracks. And whether we sign on or don't, it's still in the process of being, I actually think it was ruled unconstitutional. And I think it's up for appeal.
I just did some math too. They typically charge $3 a student head to be a part of that lawsuit, so that's how they bill every district. So $3 a head for us would roughly be $5,300. That to me doesn't really seem like a wise use of our money when it's probably not going to go anywhere. Let's just be real. I don't have a lot of faith in us winning that fight. Hopefully there's some middle ground there. But at a legislative event last year before I was here, it was a pretty good bipartisan representation, and everybody kind of all agreed through like, look, vouchers aren't going away. Let's just make peace with that. Where we can find middle ground is pretty much where the malleability is. But to piggyback off one thing, I think off your question about reaching out to the legislature, last spring, right around this time actually, when they were about to sign the new biennium budget bill into law, there was a lot of people in my field going up and advocating for their districts and just saying, all these things you're doing to make property taxes go away and this, that, and the other are going to very, very much hurt districts. One specific example was a lot of districts have a permanent improvement levy that they collect money on, and they often use that to pay off bonds or other debt. And they're talking about just completely taking away that income stream for people, and they said, well, hey, we have a bond for another 20 years. That's going to make the payments. If you take this away, we default on our bond, and then they take away our state foundation money as a result to make up that bond payment. And they literally said, oh, we didn't think about that. So that's who's in control. I mean, so again, even when you're giving them the real deal, like, hey, we will literally lose money, can't pay off debt we have, they're going to take other money that they're giving us just to make that up. Oh, we didn't think of that. Can you think of a weaker answer? But yet they're trying to push this across the finish line after talking to zero tax experts.
I'm aware I talked to you about that.
Yeah, so we do get money.
Yeah. So I don't want to beat the voucher wars, but I disagree with you. I'm not fighting for a couple reasons. Kentucky fought and they won against it.
Well, I'm not saying not fight. I'm just saying.
But they made it. But the difference there is they made it a constitutional amendment.
Right. Okay.
We do not have that here.
Okay. Got it.
So I think that's a very valid point. They actually did a statewide ballot initiative, and that's why it's unconstitutional there.
Okay.
That's a little tighter in Kentucky because of that vote. Here, there is nothing like that.
But we're still one of the only states that has this open voucher program, and other states have voted it down. So I'm struggling to understand, like, and you're saying that, and I want to make sure it hasn't passed all the way through. Is that what you're saying?
It was deemed unconstitutional.
The new voucher program.
But I do believe it's an appeal. Like
So you think they'll push it through?
they'll fight this for many years.
Okay.
Like, it's not dead yet,
Okay.
but we read updates where it is, and
It's just gonna some phasing hung up somewhere.
what's interesting
No, I
about
appreciate
vouchers,
it.
and it's somewhere, I don't know if I have the percentage correctly, but 85 to 90% of the people that are taking vouchers were already in a private school. So the expansion really hasn't been there. So, and that's just the number that was part of the lawsuit. I think it's between 85 and 90% of the people taking it were already there. I mean, I tell people all the time, school choice is here. It's here in Ohio. We
do have school choice with the voucher program with IUP 504 or somebody who economically couldn't afford it otherwise. I have friends that are doctors, they don't even know.
Well, that's the legislature who did 450%, 600% of poverty. I don't know
It's
the number.
a pretty high number.
It's a phase. It's a gradual
I've
phase
looked
out.
at
I
it.
think the top amount is like 9 something. But we have bigger fish to fry here
Okay.
to try to balance our budget and convince our community that we're worthy of their money. I mean, we pay
No, I see
attention.
what you're saying.
We pay attention to it. When we're asked, we share with our legislators how we feel. But joining the lawsuit, really, back to the original question, the board and the administration weighed what it would cost and would it be worth it, and
Okay.
that $5,200 could definitely be used for something else at the moment.
Thank you.
I bought that anyway.
That was my question. As a retired educator, living in the district with 3 daughters that went through New Richmond, with a great education, all 3 have very substantial jobs, and it's because of the education they received at New Richmond School. The first attempt at vouchers was by Governor Voinovich in a Cleveland experimental situation for $5,000. It has grown continuously since then. The reason why I asked the question, this is the first concerted effort by educators and by Board of Education in the state of Ohio to actually recognize that, like other states, unlike other states, the people in Ohio have never had a vote on vouchers. There's never been any ballot issue that says, should we or should we not have vouchers? Personally, I'm all in favor of private education. If you want to educate your children out of a public school, for heaven's sakes, take advantage of that. However, I live on a private road in Pierce Township. I don't expect Pierce Township to fix my road. I don't expect Claremont County to plow my road. I don't expect the state of Ohio Department of Transportation to make certain that our signs are right. So if I want to live on a private road, I pay for that. And that's why I think that 300 out of 614 Board of Educations in Ohio is very important. It's the first concerted effort. And one thing that I looked around, and there is somebody missing here that should be here. He draws an SDRS check every month like I do. He lives in this district like I do. I live about 2.5 miles from him. So where's he at? And by the way, you can contact Adam Bird as much as you want. You will get a form letter. It won't answer anything. And probably this doesn't affect you, but it certainly affects me, and it will affect you. 1:30 in the morning, on the day the budget was adopted, Adam Bird put into the budget an item. And that item took away the representative membership of active and retired teachers from his retirement system. No discussion, no hearing. It was Adam Byrd. Adam Byrd has zero interest in the Richmond School. He has no interest in Pierce Township. So, contacting Adam Byrd, good luck. I've done that repeatedly. You're not going to get anything from him. He's got an agenda, and unfortunately, he doesn't even write his agenda. He follows the agenda. He's told what to do. And you know, one thing you got to give Adam Byrd credit for. He follows orders.
And listen, I want to add something. I don't want to bash on Adam, but I sat at a meeting at Grant, a leadership meeting, and they put numbers up, and it showed how much money Grant gets from the state. Like, everyone thinks we're not supplying any money, we're not giving any money. I asked for air in that meeting. And I was like, he looked at me, I'm like, okay. So he's not who you need to contact. It's Terry, it's David, heck, Gene Schmidt, it's not him.
There's educational heads now too, and educational funding that I don't completely understand that I've been looking into. And my kids came from private schools, and they're both wanted to come out here, and they are happy as can be. And I have told parents there are more science options at this school. Sorry, and then I know you didn't want it to derail, but there are more science options at this school. There are more options at Grant than anything I paid for at any of the private schools that I walked through. So this BS and blow up about our schools not being good is some kind of propaganda, illusionary, psychological truth that people have decided to repeat until they think it's true. And it's time that it stops. Like, it has to stop. We have an amazing community here, and maybe everybody else has been driving by past this river for 40 years and they forgot what it looks like. But we just got here, and this is insane. Like, it's a great place, and anybody that sees otherwise, I don't know what to tell them. It's okay to complain. It's okay that you want changes. But to not see what we have and see what you're about to tear down to the ground and foundation for reasons you don't even understand the data and stats on is unacceptable.
And I would agree to the point that we would love to not have to go back to our community every 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, and they don't want us to.
We would love to be able to receive the amount of money that it costs to educate children properly, to give them a well-rounded education. There are not lots and lots of extras here. They're exactly what children need to have a well-rounded experience. And there are many places in this district where adults volunteer their time to do things to increase the opportunities for kids. And one example could be, if you go back to our board meetings, Dr. Coons in Monroe presented about the 4 or 5 teachers that just do writing club, that do frisbee golf, that do other things. It's not everything we do isn't a paid for stipend. There are lots of really great things that happen in this district. No one would be happier than me to not have to go out to the community every 4 and 5 years and say, we're being shorted here, we're being shorted there, we can't collect any more than we're guaranteed. I'll give you an example. The legislature's been working hard. They talk this nonsense about inside millage, okay? The unvoted millage. We only collected was 1.6 million. It grew to 1.9. There are districts that have played the game and lowered it all the way to the 20 mil floor. Why did they go to the 20 mil floor? Because if they saw a 30% increase in their taxes, they saw the full 30% increase in that amount. We are not on the floor. We are sliding back to the floor only because as our property values, somebody asked about why are we considered wealthy. One of it is it is what our property is worth here. Our property is considered very wealthy. It's the part of the equation. It's not just the power plants, but the property here is growing, and it's growing exponentially. But when your property tax bills go up after each reevaluation, it's not coming to us. We may get a little bit more off of that 1.9 million. Okay, we got 300,000. If there are 3,000 homes I mean, a little bit is a little bit in today's economy. I don't want to minimize that. We are not seeing it. It's going somewhere else. We're capped. The last issue in 2020, it was for 5.some million. We can't collect any more than that 5.some million. We're capped. He uses a great example as the treasurer. We've got all the balloons in the box for that 5+ million. If we build 1,000 new homes, you put 1,000 balloons in that box. We might get a little bit on the inside, but we're not getting any more on that 5.some.
Load and levy does not grow as new construction grows.
So I would be thrilled if they would find a system that worked. I'm not a politician. I'm an educator. My passion is making sure children have a well-rounded experience, that my staff gets the support and the resources that they need, and that we can feed and safely transport and provide the extracurriculars that help kids grow and stay connected. And then, find a career, a post-secondary experience, or a military career that they're passionate about. That's our work. But yet we've spent a collective of 90% of our time working on balancing the budget. We did the fiscal reduction plan, and now going back out and saying, we're still short, we're trying really hard, meet us where we are, and these are the only two vehicles we have. It's an earned income tax, which people said no, or a property tax. Those are our only two vehicles because absolutely no one is coming to save us. They don't have any interest at the moment. This is not a pro-public schools legislature. This is not a pro-funding legislature. Just look at everything they're doing. You don't have to take my word for it. Read all the bills and all the things that they're introducing. And oh, by the way, when they talk about that the school board has local control, all they keep doing is adding mandates that take more time for the classroom. Let's teach about fentanyl. Let's teach about domestic violence. We're not the ones putting that in. It's the legislature. They're putting it in. We want to talk about how our kids can be prepared, good readers, good writers, critical thinkers, good communicators. But we keep getting pulled into these other webs by Columbus. They have
extra money for it.
They have a deregulation bill. It's not a deregulation bill. They're adding more crap, and they're not giving us any more time or any more money. So I think for us, nobody would be happier than for us not to have to go through this cycle of having to ask for money. Properly fund the schools, find a good system. You've had 6 that the experts have said that would work, but the legislature just keeps doing what they want to do. I once was with a lobbyist, and he says the worst thing for any state is one-party rule. When there is not the ability to work across, when there is not a supermajority, you just keep pushing, and you can move the train, and you have to worry about what's happening over here. One-party rule is just dangerous, according to lobbyists, especially the lobbyists that talk about public schools, because what they have in their mind, they're just rolling down the track. And what's happening is more and more school districts are going out because we're being shorted on the funds that we were promised in the formula.
And it's hard because you have to give a letter of these things. You can't even brag about the program that they have here to make sure it's you and make the program pay the money rate. It's just a hard fight. So anyway, I'm not going to say it.
So there was a couple good questions that we probably could piggyback on. How much money, so this is the private charter, how much money in transportation is currently being spent transporting students to charter and private schools? So if you have a private school or a charter school within your boundary, you are required to transport to them. So we have 2. We have a community school, and then we have a private parochial, I think. If not, we're running 4 routes is what I can tell you. But they're not full routes. We run a van to a couple of it's cheaper for the district to run a van, and by law we can run vans. And then if you're outside of a certain distance, the district has to pay what's called, if you're inside of a certain mileage or time frame, the district has to pay in lieu of. So, in lieu of. So anything, but we really are running 4 dedicated routes for private and parochial schools at the moment. So, and some of those run our kids, and in between run the community schools, so you could even knock 2 of those out. We run a van and a bus to privates, and then 1 other van, but it's doing a service as part of an individual education plan, which we get reimbursed for that. So, but if it's within your boundary, it's the law. Like, it has to happen.
So if busing gets cut through the finances, are those routes cut or do they stay?
If let's say we said no high school busing, that means that bus doesn't go to any high school. But if we went to state minimums, that would be 2 miles, but we would still be busing to, I think, K8. You would still be busing K8 to those privates or parochials, even if we went to state minimum. It would really just knock out the one high school route at the moment. And it's actually a shuttle. It's doing a primary school and parochial. We try to maximize those routes. But that route really is a private parochial, and the van runs a private parochial. The other two that run the community school, we use those for our AM and PM runs here. So we're not spending an astronomical amount of money. And I always like to say, those are our families too. And they do, when their property taxes go up, they vote for us or don't, we still transport. They are our families, they're our kids, and we do what's inside the law. So that's a great question. And then one of the cuts that we identified in our fiscal reduction plan in December was a mental health counselor. And the question was, what caseload would be cut? Would it be students who are identified, students on a 504, general ed, or all population? Is that contract through a company and paid through insurance of the school? So we contract with a company. Counseling Source is our partner. We have 4 employees. Next year we will drop down to 3. And while their caseloads will be up, they will still be within the rules of what is allowed. And then I've also met with Child Focus. Child Focus is bringing on some itinerants. So if there is space in that itinerant's caseload, they can pick up any extras that are needed. So while it's not ideal, it still will be within the caseloads of what our standard practice. We do not charge, I'm not sure, I would be making that question up. I don't know if we bill insurance or not for Counseling Source. Do we use Medicaid?
Actually, not for Medicaid. Yeah, they actually just did push out Medicaid expansion. That's actually as of January. So prior to January this calendar year, you actually couldn't bill Medicaid for mental health under like the behavioral plans for kiddos. It's strictly like IEPs, 504s. So that actually could be a nice little bump there. But if we don't have the kids, then we can't bill Medicaid. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. So Medicaid's always fun for me. Yeah, Medicaid's fun for me because one year you can have a lot of kids that you can bill for, so that revenue's good that year. Then the next year, all those kids can transfer and graduate, and then that money goes away. So you look at the graph of Medicaid, so I don't really bank on that. But
I own a private run. I know.
yeah,
And
so,
we do not require insurance to be tied to Counseling Source. That is a service. The district was investing this year about $280,000. We've dropped that down to about $210 as part of those $1.3 million of cuts that the board approved that we
If there
recommend.
is the potential for potential revenue, whether planned or unplanned.
yeah,
Through the
as long as it's billable, yeah, that's one. So
Even a counselor's trainee, or as long as they're can bill at the lowest level licensure.
I might talk to you more about coming in and giving our people a little bit of tips on some billing expansions if I can get you
I do
contact.
billing. Yeah.
Perfect.
That's fine.
So another one going along with, what is, we talked about extracurriculars in our working class community. What will the impact be on our students' livelihood if sports and clubs, etc., if the levy does not pass? So we have been talking about our investment. Our budget's about $28 million. Our investment, is about $500,000 for all the clubs and the activities. So that includes the $84,000 we spent to transport last year. So all of the sports across all of the seasons were about $84,000. I think that included some field trips too. And then the rest is stipends. But with both of us being new, we're starting to look at what do we generate in our ticket revenue. So that's that $500,000 when you collect all the revenue from football, basketball, revenue generating sports, that offsets that number. And then we do collect some pay to play now. We're one of the lower pay to play in the area. We've been studying pay to play. Initially, we thought of about a number around $300 with no family cap. We've been playing with that based on some community feedback, so we're not sure where we're going to land, but our goal is to land somewhere in the average of the county. But our losses are just about $300,000 at the moment. So we're only paying about $300,000 after we collect our pay-to-play and after we do our gate revenue. So $300,000 on a $28 million budget. It's not what people think. They often feel like those extras are drowning the budget, but they're really not. And it is so much cheaper and more effective to run your own buses. I can't tell you how much higher that $84,000 number would be if we were to run our transportation through like a private company, like a Peterman, like a Clue, like a First Student. We can maximize our staff better than just a standard trip fee. So, and I think for a district of our size, with the distance that we run, Clinton Massey is in our league, Wilmington is in our league, and we're only at 84,000. And I think that's really remarkable for the size of our league and the distance that our league spans. So we do not spend an exorbitant amount of money. One of the things, just like everything else, our supplementals, which were readjusted in the last couple of years, those are the stipends that coaches get, are far below the average. They're far, far below what a head football coach might make here versus 10 minutes up the road in a like-sized district. There's a big difference there. So I would say that we're doing well in transportation. We certainly would love to do more in supplementals, but we're below average. It's only $300,000, we would say, truly. And I will say, as an educator, one connection to the school district, just one, increases your likelihood of persisting and finishing and being connected to the school, to the activities, and to the community. Just one. And if you do two, it goes up further and further. So it's only about $500,000 is our all-in. When we put the revenue on top, we're about 300 and some. That's all that we're in the hole. So, and we do rely heavily on, they're not really a booster club. I think they're a foundation. The athletic foundation does each team does a lot of fundraising. They run their money through the athletic foundation, and that also reduces our costs of extras. We're on a uniform refresh recycle. We have a trainer through a local hospital that generates money for the district. So we try very hard. We sell ads. We sell all of those things. Bring in revenue to kind of drop that $300,000 down.
I was going to say on that note, one thing that is new for us this year, I'll be interested to see the impact. Prior to this year, they were only doing cash only for the concessions. I'm letting you may be aware. So there's a lot of people that get stuff, they show up and they don't have cash, so they have to give it back. There's a lot of loss of money there for all those events. So we have implemented Square devices at all of those events now so we can take digital payments. So, and I like no cash. I like getting ACHs to the bank and having reports. It's a lot nicer than random people handling thousands of dollars of cash every night. Nothing go wrong. So I'll be interested to see the uptick in sales on concessions alone now that we can capture those $3 to $4 per person every time versus the people that don't have cash, which I get. So that's just another little thing that we're looking at closely. So I'll be excited to see that too. So every little thing helps. But.
So we are often asked, how do we generate money? So as a school district, we don't have the same freedom as maybe a business to generate funds. So we have our hands kind of tied. So some unique things that we're doing right now, I think, Lindsay, you talked about Grant having all the money. So we partnered with Grant. Career centers do have a lot more money at the moment. It's the way the budget is structured. So we are partnering with Grant to generate money where in some of our courses, our music, our art, our PE, if our teachers focus on both the standards that students learn and then how that particular area can turn into a career field down the road, we can generate money. So we are generating money. This is our first year with them. We won't know until the end of the year, but we're expanding that. We'll expand it into 8th grade social studies next year. You can do a unit in one of the quarters that's aligned to criminal justice and the criminal justice system and all the different jobs that are in that field. We can generate money from that course. We generate money from a course that Mr. Linder teaches here. So we're generating money through that. It could be up to $150,000, maybe $200,000. It might be more. We're not sure because we're in our first year. So that's a substantial amount of money. Right now we're sharing services with Felicity. Felicity is paying us, the school district, about $65,000. Our director of transportation is running their transportation. And our fleet manager is also their fleet manager. So the district is generating some money there. So we are looking at ways. I think one of the things you'll see in our county, specifically the smaller school districts, we're trying to maybe use each other and pay each other. So at the moment, we are receiving funds from those partnerships. We also have been selling assets. So this year we've sold 3 trucks that we can only sell on gov deals. That's the law. So we've sold a couple trucks and they've netted about $7,000. And we currently have 3 buses on gov deals with over 200,000 miles. And we will ask the board to dispose of 3 more. But again, those are just drops in the bucket. Who else are we generating revenue from?
Children.
Thank you. The rent.
From the health clinic up front, $35,000 this year. I think it only goes up to $800 the next year. That's $35,800. It brings like 39. It's to change up next year. But to get back to the grant revenue from U.S. Grant, they're going to pay us once per half of the year. They paid us for the fall. That total was $65,219. That's a teacher right there. And they actually mentioned, I'm pretty close with their treasurer. I think there was at least 7 or more classes that had kids in there that we're able to generate revenue from. But there was just like a little permit for our teacher hanging out in the ether with the state. But she says that should be approved, so they're going to tack on that extra fall payment in the spring. So the spring should be even more substantial. So in our forecast, we estimated low, just to again be conservative on that side, at around $130 for the year. But the more kids that we enroll in that, we're just going to push that. The more of those teachers we can get credentialed. I think it's a 2-hour course, say, Paul. So it's a really creative way that could escalate into $200,000 to $300,000 a year. So and it's not really that much of a change in operations for us. And I love getting a check, so I'll let you know what it looks like. I think they get paid for that in May, so we'll get our chunk of that in May or June, so we can release that info once that comes as well.
Well, the kids like the classes too.
Yeah. I think again, and I just want to make sure the focus on really is on careers in those fields. The money is great, but it's the exposure to the careers, like Mr. Pitzer's and all the careers that you can be in health and wellness. And what we did find is when we went through the standards, when we crosswalked those from grant, our teachers were doing 85 to 90% of that work already. And so, those are the things that we do. Are we on OhioCheckbook.com?
I was actually looking, so Ohio Checkbook, how many of you are familiar with OhioCheckbook.com? Not a lot of people. So it's supposed to be a state-run website. You can look up anybody's salaries and information. But I will say it's usually a fiscal year or 2 behind. I just hopped on there just as a result of that question earlier. The last year they have available is 2024. And I was looking for a few of our employees. Some of those are not showing up. And I think actually they pull that information directly from what's called our EMIS data. That's our educational data that gets reported to the state. So they are pulling that information directly from us, but the frequency of that is not something I'm currently familiar with. But I know they're actually going through a big overhaul process for Ohio Checkbook. So if that's something the community wants me to pursue, I can certainly do that too, because I don't think I have to do anything extra. They just pull data we have. But I've definitely snooped around on there, full transparency. I'm interested. And there will be years of places I know someone worked there and it does not show up. but like the year before or after it does. So it literally could be that there's a box checked in the payroll system that says don't report them to EMIS, and that's all it takes for that person to disappear. So you're at the mercy of that. I've lived that world before. EMIS is intense, and again, I could hire you right now, but it's like not reporting, and we don't have a superintendent as far as they're concerned. But they would let us know about that.
Don't we have a partnership with Ohio Made Jobs that generates revenue as well?
That's lumped in with, actually, I don't think there's no rental from that. That is
Okay.
just the clinic
Okay.
that essentially chose its portion of that.
So we are looking at adult education.
That's what I was thinking.
We're looking at transforming a space inside of the current board office through some adult education, but they won't be paying rent. The way that it's supporting our community is that people that want to be either retrained or 18 to 24-year-olds will be able to come either during the day or at night to be HVAC trained. We envision over time 3 different labs, but Ohio Means Jobs in the adult education world will pay to outfit that space, will pay for the instructor. The gain for the district really is the gainfully employed individuals in our community. Because there really is, outside of Brown County, there's really nothing this way. And so we also did meet with, we had a business roundtable from most of the village businesses and others. There are opportunities for our children to be trained and to try multiple jobs at $12 an hour, and they're paid right through the state. So there's no, there's no payroll, there's no paperwork for the businesses here. A great example is if the village wanted to hire students to work at Appalachia Fest or Freedom Fest, they can run that through Ohio Means Jobs. If a local business, either HVAC or there was some landscaping, there was some restaurant, they can hire the kids, they can train them, they can onboard them, and they can see those. I think those experiences now are as valuable as the standards that students learn when they're sitting in the classroom. So one of the questions is, what does the district do to make sure funds are spent wisely? So we spend a lot of time looking at our staffing. We'll have 14 less teaching positions going into next year. So yes, our enrollment is down. That, the district, everybody likes to bring up the past. So we spend a minute in the past and we look forward. When the Board of Education Administration decided to close NRE, it's because the district was staffing for open enrollment. And that isn't wise. So we did see a dip. You'll see, if you look at our enrollment, you'll see a dip. Now, as our enrollment is continuing to downtrend, our staffing also downtrends. So we'll have 14 less teaching positions, and our class sizes are relatively the same. Now, I know we have a big 2nd grade at Locust Corner. They have a big 4th grade, but we're still staffing within the recommendations of the state of Ohio, which is K-3, 1 to 25. That's their recommendation. And then 4 and up, about 30. But we don't have, when I look at our enrollment every week, we have a 4th grade that may have 28 or 29. But we're looking for efficiencies. Those are just cuts by attrition. So example is, we only have about 70 kindergartners at Monroe right now. They have 4 teachers this year. Well, the ratio of 70 to 4 isn't within the state recommendations. So as those children travel to 1st grade, they will have 3 teachers instead of 4. So we've had retirement, so we're just moving people within their licensure. We're relatively keeping class sizes the same or close to that 1 to 25. So we look for what I call efficiency. So as those develop, we've been keeping those. So we're making those adjustments in aides. We've made adjustments in transportation staff when we did the reduction plan. So we're also looking at things like our health insurance. Our health insurance has been within about $500,000 the last few years. It's gone up 500, down, but we're within that same range. And that's really good. We're in a consortium where we're not seeing large spikes in insurance. So our insurance, there are things that we constantly look at and the consortium looks at, but we have buying power. We're within a lot of other districts. So we're not on our own. We buy into a pool with other districts, and that helps lower our costs. And then they look at your average. They look at your 3-year average. I think they only went up 5.6 or 6.
It was like 6%, but in researching that too, I read other districts' forecasts because I clearly have nothing better to do. I'm up from Northeast Ohio originally, and I heard through the grapevine that they were seeing increases of anywhere from 12 to 20% in healthcare prices, and I said that can't be true. And I looked at forecasts and their assumptions in there, and that's for sure what they are seeing up there. So to stay within single digits, I'll take that every day, especially 6%. So that is a pretty healthy cost savings there. One thing I wanted to piggyback on too about the enrollment being congruent with our enrollment and staffing. I wish our screen was right here, but we have a pretty awesome graphic. It has one line that shows our enrollment, has some ebbs and flows, and our teaching staff pretty much is right with it. Most of you probably remember the COVID honeymoon, the best years of our lives. Almost every district said we need to increase staffing to get rid of learning loss, yet they saw a decline in enrollment. The alligator mouth was not going the way that you wanted to go. A lot of kids dropped off to do virtual options and just never came back, or they moved. And I will tell you, a lot of districts that went that way with staffing said, oh, we'll let them go after a year or two once we make up the gap. I'll give you 3 guesses how many actually did that. And that's why a lot of them are in trouble, because the free money went away, and the general fund had to pick up that bill. That did not happen here, so I wasn't here, so I can't take credit. That's the board. But again, just to kind of show you guys like what we're constantly looking at and where people get into those hot water situations. The district I left, they had the exact same thing. Alligator mouth. They went from 183 total staff to 210 in the course of 3 years. I rang alarm bells, but that's all I can do. So again, it's people that really drive the cost when you really want to get down to brass tacks, and when you see that enrollment dropping and the staffing dropping with it, that's really the way to go. We can cut a few contracts, as I said earlier. You know, it's wild to me. I kind of have a joke in the office. Unless it's a 2 comma number, it doesn't really mean much to me. Saving $100,000, you know, it does something in the short term. But when you can find ways to save $1 million over the course of 5 years, that snowballs. So I'd rather be on the savings side of that snowball versus the expenses that you can't control. So just wanted to spice that in there.
So those are all the questions that we were given. Did anything that we shared tonight spark a thought, another rabbit hole?
I just have 2 questions.
Sure.
So for, like, a lot of things I miss on social media, I mean, a lot of people say you have friends all the time, but a lot of people are missing this information. So for all the people that are enrolled, families, you have their emails, you have whatever, are you guys not allowed to push this out to everybody so that they have it to review, so that way they can make these educated choices to support the school rather than just the assumptions or listening to friends of enrichment and the whole spiel that goes on that.
Everything there is true.
So a couple. So you should have a postcard that hits your mailbox any day. That will direct people to everything and where to go. So we can't do more than we've always done, because then we can be accused of campaigning. So we have been doing a better job, starting to do a better job, because in our communication survey after the failure of the levy, or the EIT, the earned income tax, we heard from people that said, if we're not on your email or your social media, we're not connected to you. So you should get a postcard any day now. So that really highlights the first. We are another organization has graciously donated their time, their energy, and their funds to send a second postcard. And then we are going to do a combined newsletter at the end of the year, close to the voting, with our partners. So we will have more information go out there. But we have to do a better job, and we've talked about this. It's the feedback that we've gotten. We can be broke and we can do nice things. A postcard costs the district $1,700 for all 5,000 addresses. That's not an exorbitant amount of money. And we have to do a better job connecting with people that aren't in our ethos. And what we also hear is more and more people are leaving social media. I can't understand why. But, it's like, nothing divides a community more than asking for money. I don't care if it's us. I don't care if it's, senior services. I don't care if it's a library. It's divisive. And so, yes, we will have more information in your mailbox.
So the biggest thing is, I'm not going back to the argument. We moved here 4 years ago. So the biggest thing is getting the community here to stop thinking about the past. The people that went to school here, they were lucky they had all the things. Now we don't have all those things, and we want our kids to have the same things that they had to get them through school. So any other district that you lived in, they've gone through this every few years. You have this levy and goes through. Your kids are in the future. You have to support them. So I don't understand. I guess in my opinion, there's nobody here for this meeting, but it's been on social media.
600 comments.
Well, everyone can be a keyboard warrior, but if they had to come say it here, I sent somebody a little flyer.
More people.
But to your point though, too. Back to the plants. You may have heard of those. That to me, I call it like the golden spigot, right? Like before the 2020 ballot, the last levy was 1977. Find me another district that's had a decades-long span without having to come back to. You won't find it. It's just the reality.
The biggest complaint that they come up with on Facebook for everything is that you wasted all the money that came from the power plants.
On what?
Well, on what? You were supposed to have banked all that money so that you could anticipate the fact that these plants were going to close and have all this money for the future.
And so it's not an argument. What I would say to those folks is look around. Everybody's got turf fields now, with the exception of a few. What I would say is that money padded our savings account. That is why a $1.3 million cut can carry us through 2029. But there's going to be a point in time where we can't. We're sort of close. We're close. The pendulum's in the middle. No money. We start to swing the other way, and you get to a point where you don't know what else to cut without being catastrophic. And I am of the mind that the community should have multiple opportunities to weigh in, because when the state loans you money, you have to pay it back. You keep going to the ballot box until there is no free money in this game. So I am of the mind that everyone else has nice things. I would also argue we have really nice facilities, but we are not eligible for any type of Ohio Facilities Commission money. Locust Corner was built without any loan, correct me if I'm wrong, any loan, or the OFCC, or the ELK program. It was built with the power plant money. Now, what scares me to death is that, we're like homeowners. When you don't have what you need, you push things off. You push off a roof. You push off paving. All that's coming. All of that is here. So we also deal with, while we're cutting and making choices to preserve what's in the classroom, one roof fails, one boiler fails, it accelerates the timeline of that money running out. And so I would argue that everybody else is caught up and probably has nicer. Look around the county. We have school districts that have every building but one up the road is brand new. Others, all 8 or 9 of their buildings, brand new. And so what we have treated with dignity and care. The kids do this. People talk about our kids all day, every day. This is their lunchroom. Look around. Look at the floor. Look at the walls. They work as hard to maintain these facilities as the staff who helps take care of them too. These are our kids. The generations of kids that have come, they take care of this. The people that talk on social media about how bad our children are, I'll start giving paid tours. I'm in our buildings every week. Yes, our children, they face challenges that we could have never imagined. And I can tell you the best thing that's happened this year is we don't have cell phones in school. It's made a huge
It's
difference.
the best thing ever.
It's made a huge
No,
I'm
difference.
so glad that you took it away. My kids didn't have it.
There is every once in a while the legislature gets it right.
On that note,
Too much credit.
I wanted
One
to say though,
I'm so
too,
proud.
No, no, it's not.
back to the point too about sitting on a pile of gold. Part of the biennium budget that didn't make it to was they were saying they actually stole from my organization. So I'm part of Ohio Association of School Business Officials. They put out a paper a few years ago that said it's financially responsible at least to have 35% of your operating budget in cash as a savings account, essentially. Okay? Like all of us, how many of you would agree your savings account you have is a smart thing, right? They took that number and said, that must mean all you need to have sitting around. So if you exceed that, they're going to start to say, we're going to claw back any money you got in taxes that exceeded that and give you guys a tax break. But what happens if the next year that doesn't happen? Then you don't get a credit. I still get angry phone calls. Why do I not? I didn't do it. That can change like crazy. But the other part is, too, like back to his point about new facilities, the more cash you have, savings, you get a better bond rating. Therefore, the ask to the community is lower. Much like if you went to go get a home loan and you're like, I've got $0 on the first-time home buyer, it's not going to be pretty, right? So, I mean, that's just another reason that I don't trust them up there, because they're saying everything that you would say is financially, fiscally sound, whether it's in this sphere or a personal sphere, we're not going to follow that. So, it's crazy. Yes.
I just want to say kudos to you guys in the district for putting the security to keep our students safe. Nobody mentioned that tonight, but as a mama,
cheap either. I
it
get you.
speaks millions. And I'm from California. I'm not from Ohio. But when I turn my children, the most valuable thing into you guys' hands every day, this mama worries. And when that happened over at Locust Corner, the security measures that even the middle school bringing him in. No one really talks about the security, but kudos to you and thank you for spending that money for that security for all of our babies.
Well said.
Yes, sir. So if the levy passed and you've got a specific amount, and you say this is what we need to carry us 3 years, 5 years.
It's a 5-year ask.
5-year ask. Okay, so is that going to keep us at the status quo we are with the cuts that you just made, which means we have no room for improvement, no room to add teachers? Is there something baked into that which is important? Is there something in there that's helping with a rainy day fund or a catastrophe that might happen?
Well, what I would say right now, so we're unique in a lot of ways. So one, the only levy we're collecting is into our general fund. A lot of districts have a permanent improvement fund that they have levies that they're collecting into, which is literally for infrastructure. So we don't have that. So we have to fully fund capital projects, like again, if the roof leaks or breaks, it's $200,000-$300,000 that comes right out of that fund. A lot of districts have that whole other fund that we don't have. The way the math would work with the levy essentially is we would actually have an excess of revenue for the first 4 years. So we are padding that cash. We actually would get up to over into double-digit millions again, which has been a hot minute since that's happened. Which, by the way, perspective, I think it was fiscal 2014. The district ended with an ending cash balance of over $30 million. We're projected to be somewhere around 8 this year. It's a pretty big difference, okay? So again, talk about spending that down. That's from not coming back to the voters every 5 to 6 years. So by fiscal 29, I believe that number we should be somewhere around about 12.9 million ending cash. But then fiscal 30, we start to kind of get on the other side of that curve where that can drop off. But again, as enrollment declines or increases, we will make adjustments to staff in there. But as it is right now, I mean, the reduction plan we put in place, we have to keep the course with that. Because the more bodies you add back, that just gets us right back in the position we were in.
Right. I think it's important that, you know, as you take the number of educators down, obviously if something changes, we don't want to continue to take the number of educators down.
Right.
You know,
I don't
unless
think
it's an
anyone
enrollment
wants to
thing.
see a room with one teacher to 38 kids. I lived that dream when I was a teacher once. It's not fun.
Right.
But again, so those first 4 years, having an excess of revenue, that kind of gets us that quote-unquote rainy day fund. It's not $30 million like we once had. And again, there's other things that I don't have a crystal ball for, but the U.S. Grant Career Center money we're getting, that could escalate to $400,000 to $500,000 from $100,000. That could be, but I can't predict those things 4 years out. So, you know, right. And again, since we filed that reduction plan, we've actually had 3 more teachers file for retirement. So that's an even bigger savings for us that isn't captured in that February forecast I filed. So, you know, there is a little bit of an art and a science to forecasting, but I still tend to be on the conservative side for revenue because a good chunk of it's not in my control.
Right.
Good luck with Columbus. I can't control that. My last district I was in, it was 78% state funded. So I pretty much just threw my hands up every year and said, we'll see what happens. But
Because we want to keep the district attractive to not only families,
Right.
but to keep
absolutely.
quality people
And
coming
again,
in.
I think the other big piece of that too is the capital planning piece too. I mean, stuff breaks, boilers don't last forever, roofs don't last forever. And again, our roof might cost us 18, 20 G's for our personal homes. It's going to cost us hundreds of thousands, if not more. And those are things that are on our radar constantly. And we don't want it to be in a snap pinch where we don't have that money and we have to go out for financing. I do not like loans. I do not like debt. So that is baked into the plan there. So, but the key piece to remember here is, you know, we do get it's called tangible personal property reimbursements from the state. Kind of speaks back to the taxes that big corporations had to pay on their properties. So like Amazon had a fulfillment center. Hypothetically, years ago, they would pay a tax on all the inventory. Zimmer pay a tax on all the inventory. That's scaling back by $330K a year until it's gone in fiscal 36. So we used to get close to $8 million just in that alone from the state for reimbursements. It's peeling back $330K a year until it's completely gone in fiscal 36. So, I mean, we're fighting a 6-figure loss that I have zero control over. I know it's happening. We can't cut $300,000 as easily as we're losing it on the revenue side. But that's just one reality that we can't escape there. So, when they're taking a big chunk away, it's got to be made up somehow. So, just another, again, nice little unique New Richmond fact there. But again, going from $8 million on that line out of the forecast to $1 million in a couple of years, revenue-wise, that's another hole to get filled. So, you got something to share with class?
No.
So that's all we had for tonight. We will be around. There are some board members around as well. If you have some questions that you didn't want to ask the entire group. Mr. Floyd and I cannot campaign. We can only do factual things. We are considered 24/7 employees. Board members can advocate for the passage of a levy. And then on your way out, the pizza tonight, the food was paid for by the We Are New Richmond Political Action Committee. So if you're interested in volunteering, I know they have some events planned that they can talk about in order to get the word out. And they can probably talk directly about one of the things that they're planning to do to be on postcards. They can talk about that. So they can tell you when they meet, where they meet, what they're looking for. I'm grateful that there is a group of citizens that are working on behalf of the district. They've come together. But Mr. Floyd and I can only talk facts. We can't campaign. So if you have specific questions about the levy and the why and the yes or the no, I would ask you to talk to the board members that are present. If you have factual things, we will stay here until the last person is here to answer those questions. So thanks for coming.
Thank you.